You can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns. You just can't. And you can't, listen, you can't walk in with guns. You can't do that. But
on the 6th of February 2026, President Donald Trump signed a single executive order that quietly altered how the United States decides who receives American weapons first. According to official documents, the order replaced long-standing procedural sequencing with a new priority framework tied to defense spending, strategic alignment, and industrial capacity. There was no public list of winners or losers, but in a system defined by limited production and existing commitments, changing the rules of priority necessarily changes the cue. What followed was not clarity, but pressure across allies, institutions, and the White House itself. According to official documents, Donald Trump signed an executive order establishing what the White House calls the America First Arms Transfer Strategy. The stated objective was efficiency, to accelerate U.S. arms exports and ensure that American weapons flow first to partners deemed most critical to U.S. national interests. According to public reporting, the order directed multiple agencies, including the Departments of Defense and State, to revise how foreign military sales are evaluated and processed. The emphasis shifted away from procedural order and toward strategic priority. Defense spending levels, regional security relevance, and industrial considerations were elevated as deciding factors. The miscalculation embedded in that decision is structural. The order assumes that prioritization alone can meaningfully alter outcomes in a system constrained by production capacity, legal review, and existing contracts. It treats arms transfers as a scheduling problem rather than a supply problem. Institutional resistance does not appear as open defiance, but as friction. Arms exports remain governed by statute, interagency review, and congressional oversight. Even with new guidance, the same institutions still control approvals, notifications, and delivery timelines. The immediate consequence is mechanical. When criteria change, relative position changes. Some partners move forward, others move back. According to Reuters, the order itself does not specify which countries gain priority, leaving implementation to agencies already managing backlogs. Trump's leverage narrows here. Having issued the directive, he must now rely on institutions to execute it within existing limits. The policy promises acceleration, but it cannot escape the bottlenecks it inherits, and those bottlenecks do not respond to executive language. According to statements from the White House, the executive order calls for the creation of a prioritized catalog of weapons systems deemed essential to U.S. security interests. The intent is to streamline decision-making and focus production on systems most likely to be transferred to key partners. According to public reporting, this catalog is meant to guide both foreign military sales and direct commercial sales. In theory, this reduces ambiguity. In practice, it introduces a new layer of coordination into an already crowded process. The blind spot is capacity. Weapons manufacturing operates on long lead times, specialized labor, and supply chains that cannot be expanded instantly. Even when policy signals change, factories do not retool overnight. According to analysis reported by the Wall Street Journal, production constraints have already strained delivery schedules for several high-demand systems. Institutional resistance emerges as arithmetic. If production lines are full, prioritization reallocates scarcity rather than eliminating it. A faster approval does not produce a faster missile if the line is already committed. The negative consequence follows directly. Partners told they are a higher priority may still face delays. Partners not explicitly prioritized may assume deprioritization even without confirmation. The order accelerates expectation faster than it accelerates output. Uncertainty compounds this effect. According to Reuters, the administration did not publish a country-by-country priority list. Agencies retain discretion, and discretion invites interpretation. Trump's remaining options begin to compress. To demonstrate success, the administration would need visible deliveries. But deliveries depend on industrial timelines that predate the order. The gap between announcement and outcome widens, and that gap becomes the space where credibility erodes. The core impact of the executive order is not what it states, but what it implies. According to official documents, priority will now favor partners that spend more on defense and align closely with U.S. strategic objectives. In a system of finite supply, Priority is another word for position in line. What the order does not do, according to public reporting, is name names. No ally is formally elevated. No ally is formally downgraded. That absence is not neutral. It creates a competitive ambiguity. Allies understand how cues work. If some move forward, others must move back. Without a published ranking, each partner is left to infer its standing from behavior, timelines, and informal signals. That inference process itself becomes destabilizing. According to Reuters, the order leaves implementation details to agencies. Those agencies must balance new guidance against existing commitments. Contracts signed years earlier still govern delivery. Congressional notifications still apply. The result is a layered queue, not a reset. The miscalculation here is political. The administration appears to assume that ambiguity preserves flexibility. In reality, ambiguity redistributes anxiety. Partners begin to interpret delays as signals. Accelerations become precedents. Silence becomes data. Institutional resistance is indirect but persistent. Defense and state officials cannot simply reorder deliveries without triggering diplomatic and legal consequences. Each adjustment carries downstream effects, from regional balances to alliance trust. The negative consequences are mechanical and cumulative. Allies compete for reassurance, production schedules tighten, diplomatic bandwidth is consumed, explaining what the order does not explicitly say. It is important to state clearly what is not confirmed. According to public reporting, there is no verified list of countries moved up or down as a result of this order. Any assertion of specific winners or losers would go beyond the public record. But the pressure is real. When a system announces new priorities without publishing outcomes, participants adjust behavior defensively. Defense spending pledges become signals. Procurement announcements become positioning moves. Trump's leverage diminishes in this environment. Having shifted the criteria, he must now manage the fallout of expectations he cannot immediately satisfy. Each delayed delivery undercuts the perception of control. The climax is not a single confrontation, but a structural bind. The order accelerates competition among allies while leaving production unchanged. It raises the stakes of timing without expanding supply. That mismatch generates tension the White House cannot directly resolve. As the weeks pass, the absence of visible results becomes its own outcome. Priority without delivery is indistinguishable from rhetoric. The queue remains, only now it is contested, politicized, and harder to manage. According to court filings and statutory frameworks, U.S. arms exports are subject to congressional review periods and legal thresholds. Executive guidance can influence priorities, but it cannot remove these requirements. Institutional resistance surfaces through process. Notifications must be sent. Objections can be raised. Production contracts cannot be rewritten unilaterally. Each step absorbs time. The blind spot in Trump's approach is the assumption that executive urgency translates into institutional speed. In reality, institutions are designed to resist sudden acceleration, particularly in matters involving weapons transfers. Negative consequences follow predictably. The administration faces questions about consistency. Allies seek clarification. Congress asserts oversight. What was framed as efficiency becomes entanglement. Trump's options narrow further. Pressing agencies harder risks legal and political pushback. Waiting risks the perception of stagnation. Reversing course would concede miscalculation. According to public reporting, the administration has emphasized industrial expansion as a longer-term solution. But expansion timelines extend well beyond the political horizon. The forward pressure is unmistakable. Each institutional checkpoint slows the momentum the order promised to create, turning urgency into friction. According to official documents, the executive order was designed to project control over prioritization, over alignment, over outcomes. What it reveals instead is constraint. Trump's posture remains reactive. Having changed the rules, he must now respond to their consequences. He cannot compel factories to produce faster. He cannot bypass statutory review. He cannot fully manage allied expectations without publishing trade-offs. The negative consequences accumulate quietly. Delays persist. Ambiguity lingers. The queue remains reshaped but unresolved. Trump's remaining leverage is limited to messaging and marginal adjustments. The core variables, production capacity, legal process, institutional inertia, remain outside direct executive command. This is the structural endpoint of the order. It narrows options rather than expanding them. It converts a complex supply system into a visible pressure point. According to public reporting, no immediate surge in deliveries followed the announcement. What followed instead was scrutiny, interpretation, and waiting. The policy does not collapse, it constrains. And in that constraint, the promise of decisive control gives way to the reality of governed systems that do not move on command.